Good morning, afternoon, or evening. Welcome to All Things Social Security. I am Stephanie Joy, the attorney at Joy Disability. Welcome to the channel, and I hope you enjoy the video. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. Stephanie Joy with All Things Social Security and the law practice of Joy Disability. Okay, so someone was asking about, can you do a video explanation discussing, the person was agitated, understandably so, so the gist of it is how some adult children who were auxiliary beneficiaries of a parent who became disabled, died, or retired while being insured for Social Security retirement, or became on Social Security disability, of course. So the gist of it was the person was obviously uh, aware of, experience, perhaps him or herself, that some kids grown up find out, if they didn't already know, which they, I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't know, but or maybe why they don't even need to, that they are, because they are a minor child and because a parent that was of who they were a dependent passed away and had this insurance, and there was an auxiliary benefit that they were entitled to and received, they now think once they hit 18 or above at some point that that money should be in their hand, like it came in for those 15 years while someone else was supporting them, and that it should never have been spent on them. It should have been saved for them so that they can then go and do whatever they're going to do with it. I understand the urge to think that, we come into adulthood and we're flat broke usually, unless we come from a silver spoon. So I get that. But they need to know the reality of the situation because they are entirely incorrect. These kids, these adult kids, there is one exception I can think of, but I don't know that there's a remedy. But if I can think of it at the end, I will share it. So here's what that money's for. It wasn't for you. It wasn't designed preliminarily for you to have a nice little $100,000 nest egg when you were 18 or something. That's not what it was designed for. That would be a nice perk, however, and a wonderful byproduct if that's the way life went. Here's what the primary purpose of that auxiliary benefit for you is: to keep a roof over your head with a contribution from your deceased parent. Rest in peace to your parent. And I'm sorry you lost him or her. Or the contribution from your parent who is retired and now earns less but still needs to care for you. Retired, or your disabled parent who is disabled, which is very unfortunate. So perhaps if you're not disabled, show a little gratitude that you're not. That person worked to get an auxiliary benefit to help that person or your next custodian take care of you while he's not able or she's not able to be footing out the bacon because they're not working substantially anymore. All right, so do we have the gist of it? The auxiliary benefit is not fun money and it's not play money. That is not its purpose. For very wealthy people, it can obviously sometimes go that way, but they're going to have fun money anyway, let's face it. So let's get back to reality and life and the beautiful life we have, whether or not you think it's cushy enough. Okay, do I sound a little harsh? It's only because I've heard this story before, and I've seen parents or custodians get really abused and disowned by their own offspring who they supported, but perhaps not in the lap of luxury, because they somehow feel like you shouldn't have spent that. You shouldn't have spent my money putting a roof over my head and feeding me and sending me to day camp. That should have been your money. But no, what you're failing to realize is, if that wasn't a perception you might have had, I want to correct it for you, and I want to prevent anyone else from thinking this way. The auxiliary benefits are for your basic survival needs. That is why they exist. Now, again, does that mean if nobody needs that spare money because they're loaded, then they can't choose to not use it to spend on your basic needs, but can instead choose to save it for you? Absolutely. And I think that's wonderful. And I do see parents do that are a little better off than a different parent who doesn't have that much wherewithal behind them by the time they become disabled or retired. Remember, the parent who bought and paid for and worked for the auxiliary benefit to put a roof over your head should something happen to their earning capacity, that parent worked and paid for that. That wasn't a free thing. And it wasn't a gift for you to go out and buy a Maserati. It was to make sure if things slid sideways, disability, death happens, you'll have there could be the bacon earner passes away and the other parent was a stay-at-home or a minimum wage worker, right? So this is extra money to help make up for what the deceased, retired, or disabled parent can no longer physically hand out every week from the paycheck. It is paycheck replacement. And therefore it goes, and the portion of it that is the auxiliary goes to what would be your portion of the rent, the mortgage, the roof, the lights, the heat that keeps you warm at night, maybe that bedroom you have, maybe the sheets that are on your bed, maybe the laundry detergent that cleans your clothes every day. So get this concept in your head. Money doesn't fall from trees, and your sustenance while you're growing up, provided by somebody else, doesn't grow on trees either. So your very smart parent or loved one worked. That was the first wonderful thing. And then by virtue of that, paid his or her taxes like a good little soldier. But this is the part that actually comes back to them directly. Directly is the ability to keep caring for their dependent children that are minors while they're minors. Now, the exception, and I'll say it because some people are going to claim this, and I understand this too. I used to be a little involved in the foster care system. I had foster siblings of my own. And so I heard a lot of the bad stories. If you have a neglectful, and I don't mean in a discretionary way, I mean an absolutely neglectful legally, like reckless endangerment, neglectful caregiver parent who uses the auxiliary benefits to go off and do crack or do whatever else and is not keeping a sustained, decent roof over your head, decent food in the cupboards, the lights on, the heat on, everything else is secondary. This is the part that they're obligated to use that money for, keeping that all together. Some kids will say, yeah, but she didn't work and she didn't really provide that stuff. So she was using my money for something else. And that could be, I think that is the vast, vast, vast tiny minority. But as we know, there are bad eggs in every carton, every walk of life, rich, poor, disabled, not disabled, still alive or deceased. So that might be true. And that is unfortunate. I mean, if you use that bad experience well, you will have learned some valuable lessons that other people didn't learn and certainly didn't learn firsthand. Doesn't mean it's best to have those bad experiences, but take what you can to better yourself with it instead of coming out afterwards and saying, I want to do this, this, and this. Now, that's not saying, I'm not saying don't pursue that. If it was I'm talking about if you were in the cold at night because there was no heat. I'm talking if you weren't fed. I'm not talking if you didn't live in the luxury that you wanted. All right. And I know I'm speaking harshly here, but this is a reality that generations for the last 20 years and going forward probably need to learn. Okay. Those auxiliary benefits are not fun money. They were to put a roof over your head. And only if a person didn't do that, do you possibly have moral grounds to stand on. How far you can get legally with that is a whole nother thing. You can pursue it. I believe you can probably make a report to the SSA. I don't know if they have an official channel. They should to take such reports and see if you have any evidence of such. But before you ever do something like that, you might want to think long and hard. Is it really true what I'm feeling? If you're running on feelings, you're probably making a big mistake. Feelings don't make facts. So before you open up that can of worms, you might want to, make sure that really someone was abusing the monies and not using them. Because think about it, the amount you get is at most 50% of the number holder parents, what would be their benefit amount, their primary insurance amount. That's not all that much money. That will never fully pay for all the basic needs of a child, including all their proportional overhead expenses. So if someone, there should never be an expectation that there's something left over unless Again, I could see it if your parent is loaded, you know, off to Europe 3 times a year loaded. Then I could see being like, I can't believe she didn't save that for me. She had so much money, couldn't she just support me on her own? Which honestly is what I would dream to do if something happened to me or my husband with my kids, which the last one's about to age out. But, it would be a wonderful thing. And I don't know any parent I haven't consulted with who does not want to, in a way that will provide for a gift from them later. And there's a certain way to do that, something later for their kid when they're growing up, if they can master it now and pay all the bills. But the desire there doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen because life is expensive. And particularly when, we got so many people that are able to self-sustain but don't, and just take, reliance on other adults to prop them up. There's just, it leaves less for the other people in need. So going back to it, you are not entitled to that money, generally speaking. If it was stolen from you because it was not used for your basic needs. Hey, not quite done yet. I have been told that there's another part connected to this one that's of the same subject matter and actually the same video. So stay tuned if you want to see the rest of it. You'll find it under a title that is similarly titled. It'll probably say part 2 or part 3 or part 4 of the same title as this one. So hope you catch it. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.